Hi, this is Rachel Kirkland, the Modern Shaman, and thanks for being with me for another YouTube question of the week. If you're new to the channel, I always invite you to subscribe, to like, to share, to comment, and just become a part of our awesome community. We have a lot of like-minded souls in here that are just beautiful and working in the same kind of genre of life, spiritual life, and trying to integrate that and grow and evolve and live out the most highest vibrational embodiment for this lifetime. So if that's what you're into, if you vibe with all of this good juicy stuff, then feel free to connect. Also, you can go to my website, themodernshaman.net. You can send in questions for this YouTube channel. You can find out about my personal sessions that I offer on Skype or phone or in person here in San Antonio, Texas. My touring schedule, my lecture schedule, my classes, my new upcoming launch for my teaching platform and modules online. All sorts of good stuff going on all the time. This is how life goes. So if you're into it, go to the website, themodernshaman.net, and check it out. Here's the question. It says, Rachel, I have been a fan for years and I love your channel. My question is about telepathy. Is this really a thing? I feel like I do this sometimes, but I doubt myself. Can you explain exactly how telepathy works? Am I crazy for thinking I can do this? No, I love your question. You're not crazy. If you're crazy, I'm crazy too. And maybe I am. I'll claim that one. I'll stake my claim in the crazy. Oh, I can feel the energy coming in. Okay. Kind of wanting to coalesce around your question. So let's center in. Y'all know I've been kind of focusing myself and being diligent about centering into a topic and kind of breaking it into three major components. So let's just talk about three main aspects or three main points, three things to note about telepathy. So first, let me define it, and the way that I define it in my coursework is that it is the overlapping, it's the multidimensional communication that happens when you have the extrasensory perception of claircognizance, all right? Your claircognizance is your psychic knowing that is just a knowing. It's an awareness. It's like you know what you know, but you don't know why you know it. You just feel it in your gut. You just know this is going to happen. You just know this is going to work out this way. You just have a feeling about this. You just have an intuition about this. It's usually an overarching awareness of something playing out a certain way, or something being good, or something being bad, or something about to happen. It's not necessarily the details. It's an overarching knowing. It's a cumulative understanding of information and the way things play out. It's like the spherical awareness, the 360 awareness of an event, of a person, of a place, and how things will play out and how things will be experienced. Claircognizance is actually the most common psychic sense, but it's mostly overlooked because there's no definitive proof about it, unless you're like, I think this person's gonna call, you write down their name and then they call, or something like this, or I think this relationship is a bad one, you write it down and then it happens. There's a little bit of premonition that can be defined and seen, but for the most part, it's a general just sensation or general knowing, and so oftentimes we don't validate it, we don't believe it, or we don't follow through in terms of our own confidence. Now, when that claircognizance and that extrasensory perception overlaps with another psychic sense, say your clairaudience, for example, like if the claircognizance, is an X vertices and the clairaudience is a Y vertices, when these meet up, that nodule point of connection where they cross and have an intersecting point, that's what I would call telepathic communication. So your clairaudience, and I'm using this as an example, it can also be your clairvoyance, clairsentience. It's basically claircognizance. Stay with me. Your claircognizance, your awareness, your psychic awareness of how things are going to go. The feeling, the vibe, the gut, the awareness. the general intuition. This, as well as another psychic sense being overlapped on top of it. Those intersecting points of communication. Now, if you're clairaudient, you're hearing non-physical communication through the internal ear. It's not typically audible. Sometimes people do hear frequencies, or they do hear words or guidance that sounds like it's spoken to them. But mostly, it is an internal sound. It is our internal voice, our internal mental mind, our internal dialogue, our internal connections. Now, when these overlap, you get information, and the information comes in telepathically. So it is communicated and it is understood all at once. It is a multidimensional intersecting point. Now, and this is just the way that I explain it, it's the way I see it, because this is how it differs from clairaudience. Clairaudience a lot of times comes in like a ticker tape. You know what I mean? Like tick, 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 like beep, beep. Here's a news bulletin, beep, 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 and it comes at the bottom of the screen, and you're reading it in sequential order, or like an audio tape of a book where you're sitting here and you're listening, again, with a sense of sequencing and a sense of movement forward in time. There's a linear timeline associated with clairaudience. Not always, but when it comes to information given to you from the non-physical realms, typically clairaudience works like that. Now, when it overlaps with claircognizance, it doesn't need the timeline. They intersect in a point, and so there's a knowing of the information that's communicated in the instant that it's given to you. So this is what a lot of people call like downloads, or they know the information. They don't have to sit and like listen to spirit say, hey, today such and such is going to happen, and then you're going to turn the corner, and then you're going to see this antelope, and then the antelope is going to turn and look at you, and then it doesn't have this order. It just almost sets up the entire scene, and you get a download of that information like a block all at once. Sometimes it will be spherical in nature, meaning you will almost like have, if it's overlapped with your clairvoyance, you will have the vision, you will have the knowing of an entire event, an entire historic timeline or moment or a day or an entire relationship from beginning to end, and it will almost like drop like a snow globe, and you'll have access to it 360. This is a telepathic form of communication overlapping with your clairvoyance. So if you have this psychic sense of seeing, internal sight, there is a visual representation, but it doesn't move sequential. It doesn't have to move through like a movie scene. It's like you know all of what's going to happen. You know, you can zoom into details or pan out, but at the same time, the information is given telepathically in a sense of downloaded, non-sequential, outside, physically outside of space-time. It's held in the quantum realm. The second thing I want to note about telepathic communication is that it's tricky, because when we explain it, when we are sharing, when we move into an expression of it, we have to make it linear. We have to sequence it. And there's difficulty with telepathic communication because it's understood in its entirety and taken in wholeheartedly. And so when we try to express it, it almost takes away the telepathic aspect of the download. And it makes it seem more sequential and linear, and it moves it into our 3D experience. Because we have to, in our 3D and our languaging in our human form, we have to express sequentially. When we move it, if we try to make a movie of it, we can try to kind of do this with a nonlinear approach that kind of moves through vignettes of scenes and doesn't really tie them together with any sort of central character or central plot or central theme. That's possible, but that's only through visual representation. When we receive the information, it is just experienced in its totality. It's known and it's processed automatically. And this is oftentimes too why people doubt the information or doubt it, because it comes through in such a different way than our normal communication. If I was to sit down and go and have coffee with you. We'd have a 2-hour conversation. It would be a back and forth dialogue, right? If you're reading a book and you look at the dialogue of the characters, it's a back and forth. Sometimes there's some monologue in there, but for the most part, it's this back and forth sequential process. And we're receiving and we're giving. Receiving, giving, back and forth. And when this is kind of processed through normal talking and our regular human experience, it's hard to communicate a telepathic experience because it does not work that way at all, okay? And similar to if you ever have seen any, watched any NDEs or read about near-death experiences, a lot of times they will say this exact thing, that it didn't really happen this way. It didn't really happen in this order, or I'm not sure what order that this actually happened in, but I know all these things happened. This is exactly the point that I'm talking about non-sequential, outside of space-time, quantum events. They're happening in the now, and they're actually experienced that way. Telepathic communication, telepathic information is communicated in this way. It is instantaneous, quantum, downloaded, total, spherical, multidimensional, 360. It's not just 360 because it's more than one dimensional. It's more dimensional aspects than that, but it is in its entirety given and understood. And the expression of it is laborious. It takes time, and it feels like it actually turns it into something that it's not when you have to express it. This is the frustration that most people come upon when they try to express or they try to share telepathic information. A third point that I want to make about telepathic information and communication is that it can be triggered in the 3D. You can have a very physical and material trigger for this information. You're walking a track, okay? Maybe you're getting some exercise and you're at the gym and you're walking this like interior track. And you see someone across the track and you make a kind of quick eye contact. Something syncs up energetically, and you start feeling like you are hearing their thoughts, or you are aware of what they're thinking, or you're aware of what's going to happen next, or you're connected to them and you move into a telepathic connection space of communication with them. That is a material and physical trigger. Typically it's energetic, but the visual representation, a lot of times like the eyesight, a line of eye, or a short connection of energy, especially if you're empathic and your field is very open and you're highly sensitive to an energetic kind of catalyst like that. It can open you up. We do this with animals all the time. A lot of times they will look at us in a certain way, and we'll have a sense of eye contact, or they'll mimic a certain posture that moves us into our non-physical connection. And it moves us into our psychic realm more than our physical realm. And so that begins to be the dominant form of communication, especially if you have practiced this and a lot of your energy is present in other dimensional spaces. Meaning if you play roles on other planets, if you play roles in the spirit realm and the astral realm, if you have a dominant experience vibrationally in other realms, where you use this form of telepathic communication, and we all do, because we're spirit before we're form, all right? It's our most native way to communicate. But some of us are actively participating more consciously in those other realms currently in the now space. So if you're conscious that that is going on, or that you're present in other realms a lot, if you have a lot of daydreaming, a lot of dream space that is utilizing you in all of these other realms and connecting in ways like this, oftentimes we will move into that dominant form of telepathic communication without realizing it, just with an automatic physical trigger or material trigger from someone in our present reality. It sounds like science fiction, you guys, but it actually happens so often. It happens with various kingdoms, like the animal kingdom. A lot of times, even with the various dimensional kingdoms, like the fairy kingdom, which are a part of our earthly experience, but not held in the same dimensional space. Or they'll experience it just with other humans, like I said, but those that are maybe in a contemplative space or up in the astral realms themselves. I use that example of walking on the track because I had that experience. when I was younger, I would get that a lot, and I used to run track as a young girl, and it's one of my little activities or things that I was into in junior high and high school and stuff. And I would remember, because a track, it creates a meditative state. It moves you into a regulated breathing pattern. It moves you into a regulated cognitive space. And a lot of times people will zone out. They'll say, I was in the zone, when they're doing a regulated, repetitive physical activity. And I would notice that I kept moving into a trance-like state or connection with other people on the track when we would be just in practice mode, not sprinting, when we would hold a regulated pattern of our movement and our breathing. And we could be way far away on the track, but I would find myself, if I looked at them or I noticed something about them and caught a sense of energetic sync with them, that I would start to move into their brain waves, and feel and experience, and my psychic connections would become dominant over my physical connections, because the physical body kind of became trance-inducing at that state. A lot of times people will do this within their meditation. They'll be in a meditation, they'll think of someone, and suddenly they will be with them, or they will be experiencing things in connection with them, or having a connected space. I know I've already said 3 things, but I'm going to do a final bonus point, because it brings me... I'm trying to stay within 3 main aspects of telepathic information and communication, but I want to give you a bonus little homework activity. It's the teacher in me that comes out. But if this is something that you find that you're drawn to and it's naturally happening, don't wig out about it, don't freak out. It is something that you can work and strengthen as a psychic muscle, just like every other aspect of the physical form, of the mental form. You can exercise it and practice this connection. And especially if you have someone that you know does this as well, this is the way I would suggest it, is that you choose a locational space, a dimensional space, like you create a space. The way that I first started doing this was I would create kind of like a room, and it had a swinging door, like one of those old diners, you know what I mean? It had like a padded, it looked like a vinyl red door. This is just the way it looked in my clairvoyance. And had a little circular window in it. And inside that space was just some booths and like a sitting area. So I created this visual representation and spherical representation of a portal space, a created space. And it felt safe to me in my own regulated awareness. And that was my telepathic like communication space. So I would go into that space, and I would bring another individual into that space and basically have a time of downloading my day. So whatever I did that day, at the end of the day, I would move into a mental space. I would see myself walk into that room, and I would download, just kind of like have a day dump. Like, this is what I did, as if I was putting everything onto a hard drive from my day, just downloading and taking an input, putting it all in there. And I wasn't going through it sequentially. I would just set that intentional space to download my day. Now, this was a shared space that I shared with a friend that we were practicing building our telepathic communication, and they would do the same thing. And so then when we would get together and we would talk, we would bring up things that we felt that the other person was putting into that space. Did you do this? Did you see this kind of dog? Because I'm highly clairvoyant, a lot of times it would involve imagery with me. But if you're not, if you are dominantly clairsentient, maybe it's the feelings from the day, certain emotions that person experienced, certain things that they felt. So it's a practice of giving yourself a spatial group place where you can have a sense of telepathic dump or communication. Remember, you don't have to go through it sequentially. You just give an actual locational space that you've both agreed upon and kind of given yourself a visual, and then you dump your day in there, and then you leave it. Afterwards, you feel like you check up with that person and see what type of information you have been receiving and a sense of accuracy to it. Then you start to gain a sense of confidence in this connection. Now, a lot of times this happens automatically. Like I said, it will get triggered and you will automatically move into that dominant form of communication if you're used to utilizing that. But there is a way to practice it. That's my bonus suggestion to you all, is give yourself, if this is something that you want to develop, or maybe just have a fun sense of playfulness with it, of growth for yourself, of like, let me try this, let me see how accurate or how much I can feel or how deeply I can move into an awareness and connection with someone else in a non-physical realm without the use of Wi-Fi and all of our cloud-based communications. This is our non-physical, energetic, and yet very, very highly informative cloud space that's always accessible to us. So there's my take on it. I hope that blesses you.